The rain came down in sheets that November evening, drumming against the stone walls of Windsor Castle like 1,000 urgent fingers. Corporal James Hartley stood perfectly still at his post, rifle at his side, water streaming down the brim of his bearskin cap. He had been a royal guard for 7 years. He knew how to disappear into the role, to become nothing more than a statue in red and black. But tonight, something felt different. A black Range Rover pulled up to the side entrance, its headlights cutting through the fog. This wasn't unusual. Members of the royal family came and went at all hours. James kept his eyes forward, his expression blank. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, mid-30s, wearing an expensive jacket that hung loosely on his thin frame. His movements were jerky, aggressive. He slammed the door hard enough to make the vehicle shake. James recognized him immediately. Tom Parker Bowles, the Queen Consort's son. But something was wrong. Very wrong. Tom stumbled slightly as he approached the entrance. His eyes were wild, unfocused. James could smell the alcohol from 3 meters away, mixed with something sharper, chemical. Tom's hands trembled as he reached for the door handle. It was locked. Protocol required it after 10 p.m. "Open this," Tom said. His voice was thick, slurred. James remained motionless, silent. That was the rule. Guards did not engage unless absolutely necessary, said "Open the door." Tom's voice rose to a shout, echoing off the ancient walls. Still, James said nothing. He had dealt with drunk people before. They usually gave up and went around to the main entrance where security would handle them properly. But Tom didn't move away. Instead, he stepped closer, invading the careful space that protocol demanded remain empty. "Do you know who I am?" Tom's breath was hot and sour. "Do you have any idea? Before you hear what happens next, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss stories like this that will leave you speechless. Hit that subscribe button now." James's heart rate increased slightly, but his face showed nothing. His training had been brutal, designed to prepare him for exactly this kind of moment. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. Tom reached into his jacket. The movement was sudden, practiced. When his hand came out, it wasn't empty. The gun was small, black, probably a pistol. In the dim light, James couldn't tell if it was real or a replica. But the way Tom held it, the weight of it in his hand, suggested it wasn't a toy. "Now," Tom said, his voice dropping to something cold and deliberate, "you're going to open this door." Time seemed to slow. Rain continued to fall. Somewhere in the distance, a car horn sounded. James could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. The gun was pointed directly at his chest, just inches away from the gleaming buttons of his uniform. One wrong move, one sudden action, and everything could end. His wife's face flashed through his mind. Sarah, their daughter Emma, only 4 years old, who still believed her father was invincible in his red coat and tall hat. But James Hartley was not invincible. He was flesh and blood, standing in the rain with a gun pointed at his heart. And the man holding that gun was someone the palace would protect at almost any cost. What happened in the next 60 seconds would change everything. James's training kicked in like a switch being flipped. His mind began calculating angles, distances, possibilities. The gun was close. Too close for him to safely disarm Tom without risk. But if he did nothing, if he simply opened the door, what would happen then? Would Tom storm inside? Would he hurt someone? The Queen Consort herself was in residence tonight. He had seen her car earlier. "I'm waiting," Tom said. His hand was steadier now, as if the act of pulling the weapon had focused something dangerous inside him. James made a choice. He spoke. Breaking his silence was a violation of protocol, but pointing a gun at a royal guard was a violation of something far more serious. "Sir James," said quietly, his voice calm despite everything, "I cannot open this door without authorization. If you lower your weapon, I can call security to assist you properly." Tom laughed. It was a terrible sound, empty and bitter. "Security, right? So they can call my mother? So she can make more excuses for me? Tell everyone I'm just having a rough time?" He stepped even closer. The gun barrel was now pressed against James's uniform, right over his heart. "I'm done with excuses." James could feel the cold metal even through the thick fabric. He had been trained for terrorist attacks, for crowds that might turn violent, for any number of threats. But he had never been trained for this. For a member of the family he was sworn to protect, becoming the threat itself. "What do you want?" James asked. "Keep 'em talking." That was hostage negotiation basics. Build connection. Find common ground. "What do I want?" Tom's eyes glistened with something that might have been tears or might have been rain. "I want people to stop treating me like I'm invisible, like I only matter because of who my mother married. I want to matter." For just a moment, James saw past the gun, past the alcohol, and whatever else was coursing through Tom's system. He saw a man in pain, a man drowning in a shadow too large to escape. "You matter," James said. "You're a human being. That makes you matter." Tom's hand wavered, just slightly. Just enough for James to see doubt creeping in, but then voices erupted from behind them. Security had noticed the situation. 3 officers came running, their footsteps splashing through puddles, their radios crackling with urgent codes. Armed suspect. Armed suspect? At gate 7. Tom's face changed. The moment of vulnerability vanished, replaced by something harder, more desperate. "No," he said. "No, they'll ruin everything." He grabbed James by the collar with his free hand, the gun still pressed to his chest. "Tell them to back off, or I swear I'll do it." The security officers stopped about 10 meters away. They had drawn their own weapons. James could see them clearly now, under the courtyard lights. Young men, well-trained, but also terrified. They had never expected to draw their guns on the Queen Consort's son. "Stand down," one of them shouted. "Lower your weapon immediately. Get back." Tom screamed. Spit flew from his mouth. His hand was shaking again, finger curled around the trigger. James felt the pressure increase against his chest. One twitch, one panicked squeeze, and the bullet would tear through his heart before he even felt the pain. He thought of Emma again. Of the drawing she had made him last week, showing him as a giant in his red coat. Protecting a crayon castle, he had to stay calm. For her, Tom, James said softly, using his first name deliberately, trying to pull him back from whatever edge he was teetering on. "Tom, look at me." Tom's eyes shifted to meet his. "This doesn't have to end badly," James continued. "You can walk away from this. Right now. Just lower the gun and walk away." For 3 seconds, maybe 4, Tom seemed to consider it. His grip loosened slightly. The gun barrel moved just a fraction of an inch to the left. Then one of the security officers made a mistake. He took a step forward. Tom saw the movement in his peripheral vision and spun. Pulling James with him as a shield, the gun now swinging wildly between the guards and James's head. "I told you to stay back." Tom's voice cracked with rage and terror, and in that moment, everything erupted into chaos. More lights flooded the courtyard. A helicopter appeared overhead, its spotlight turning night into artificial day. The sound was deafening, drowning out the rain. James felt Tom's arm tighten around his throat, felt the gun pressed against his temple now instead of his chest. Neither position was better than the other. "Turn it off." Tom screamed at the sky, "Turn all of it off." But the machine kept circling, kept watching. Someone was making decisions above James's pay grade now. This had become an incident, a crisis. In the morning, it would be a scandal. James tried to control his breathing. Panic would only make this worse. He could feel Tom's pulse through the arm around his neck, fast and erratic. The man was on the edge of a complete breakdown. "They're not going to turn it off," James said, loud enough to be heard over the helicopter. "But they will back away if you ask them to. If you show them you're willing to negotiate, negotiate." Tom laughed again, that same hollow sound. "With what?" "I have nothing they want. Except maybe you." "Do I matter now, James? Now that I have a gun to a royal guard's head, do I finally matter?" James realized Tom had used his name. He must have seen it on a roster somewhere or heard it in passing. That was good. It meant Tom saw him as a person, not just an obstacle. You've always mattered, James said. But this won't help. This will only make everything worse. Worse? Tom's voice broke. How can it get worse? Do you know what it's like? To have every mistake, every bad decision, every stupid thing you've ever done examined by the entire country? To have people write articles about how you're an embarrassment to your mother? To the crown. James did know something about pressure, about expectations. But not on that scale. Never on that scale. I can't imagine, James admitted. But I know this. Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever pain you're in, it doesn't have to end like this. You can still choose something different. The security officers had backed up as instructed by someone on their radios. Now they stood in a wider semicircle, weapons still drawn but no longer advancing. James could see more people gathering in the shadows beyond the lights. Palace staff. Maybe even other members of the family. This was becoming a spectacle. Tom seemed to sense it too. His breathing became more ragged. "They're all watching me fail," he whispered. "Again." "You haven't failed," James said. "Not yet. You can still walk away from this as someone who made a mistake but fixed it before anyone got hurt. My mother is probably watching right now," Tom continued, as if he hadn't heard James at all. "Probably horrified. Probably wishing she had raised me better." James felt the gun barrel shake against his skull. Tom was crying now, really crying, his whole body racked with sobs that made his grip inconsistent, dangerous. "She's your mother," James said. "She loves you. That's what mothers do. You don't know that. You don't know her. No, but I know my daughter. And I know that no matter what she does, no matter how angry I might get or how disappointed, I will always love her. That's what parents do. That's what it means to be family." What? Something in those words landed. Tom's sobbing intensified, but his grip loosened. Just a little. Just enough for James to feel a sliver of hope. "I'm so tired," Tom said. His voice was small now, childlike. "I'm so tired of being this person." "Then be someone else," James said. "Starting right now. Starting with putting the gun down." For a long moment, nothing happened. The helicopter circled. The rain fell. Dozens of eyes watched from the darkness, and James Hartley stood perfectly still, feeling the cold metal against his head. Betting his life on words alone, then Tom's arm dropped away from his throat. The gun lowered, slowly until it pointed at the ground. James didn't move. Not yet. He had seen enough to know that moments like this could reverse in a heartbeat. "I'm sorry," Tom whispered. "God, I'm so sorry." "It's okay," James said, even though it wasn't, not really. "Just put the gun down, slowly, on the ground." Tom knelt, his movements shaky, uncoordinated. He placed the weapon on the wet stone. Then he stayed there on his knees, hands covering his face. The security officers moved in immediately. 3 of them surrounding Tom, one kicking the gun away. James stepped back, his legs suddenly weak. His hands were trembling now, the adrenaline draining away and leaving him hollow. But it wasn't over. Not even close. 2 senior officers approached Tom, helping him to his feet with surprising gentleness. They weren't rough with him. They didn't slam him against a wall or drag him away in handcuffs. Instead, they guided him toward a waiting vehicle. Speaking to him in low, calm voices that James couldn't quite hear over the helicopter noise, one of the security officers touched James's shoulder. "You all right, mate?" James nodded, not trusting his voice yet. His throat felt raw, though Tom hadn't actually choked him. "Just the fear had been enough. Medic is on the way," the officer continued. "You should get checked out." "Fine," James managed. But he wasn't. His whole body was shaking now. Reaction setting in hard and fast. The helicopter finally pulled away, its spotlight sweeping across the castle walls one last time before disappearing into the rainy night. The sudden reduction in noise felt like pressure dropping, leaving James's ears ringing. A woman in a dark suit emerged from the side entrance Tom had been trying to access. James recognized her. Catherine Price, one of the senior palace staff. Her face was pale but composed. She walked directly to James. "Corporal Hartley," she said. "That was extraordinary. Your composure potentially saved lives tonight. Just doing my job, ma'am, James said automatically. That was considerably more than your job, she replied. But we need to discuss what happens next. Can you walk? We should get you inside. James glanced at his post. He still had 2 hours left on his shift. Catherine followed his gaze and almost smiled. I think we can excuse you from the remainder of your duty tonight. Come with me. Inside, the castle was warm and quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Catherine led him through corridors he had never seen, past paintings worth millions, through doors that required security codes. Finally, they entered a small office. She gestured to a chair. Sit, please. James sat. His uniform was soaked through, leaving a puddle on the expensive carpet. He started to apologize, but Catherine waved it off. We need to talk about what you saw tonight, she said carefully. And what you're going to say about it? There it was. The real reason she had brought him here, not concern for his well-being. Damage control. I saw a man in crisis, James said slowly. A man who made a very bad decision and then made the right one before anyone got hurt. Catherine studied him. The press will want to talk to you. They'll offer you money, probably a lot of money, for an exclusive interview about what happened here tonight. James said nothing. He could already imagine the headlines, the photos they would use of Tom at his worst moments, the speculation about addiction, about family drama, about whether the Queen Consort was fit for her role if she couldn't even control her own son. I'm asking you, Catherine continued, as someone who cares about this family and this institution, to consider very carefully what you say. Tom Parker Bowles is not a member of the royal family in an official capacity, but he is still someone's son, someone's brother. And what happened tonight? While Sirius ended without anyone being harmed, are you asking me to lie? James asked quietly. Catherine said firmly, I would never ask that. I'm asking you to be discreet. To remember that you signed confidentiality agreements when you became a royal guard. To understand that sometimes the kindest thing we can do is allow people to get help privately, without the whole world watching them fall apart. James thought about Tom's face when he had said he was tired of being this person, thought about his own daughter, and how he would feel if someday, years from now, she made a terrible mistake and the entire country decided to judge her for it forever. What's going to happen to him? James asked. Catherine sighed. That's not my decision. But between us, I hope he gets real help this time. Proper treatment. He's been struggling for a long time. The gun, James said. Was it real? We're still examining it. Initial assessment suggests it was a replica, but realistic enough to be dangerous. He may not have even known the difference in his state. That should have made James feel better, but somehow it didn't. Real or fake, the fear had been the same. The consequences could have been the same. I need you to give a full statement, Catherine said. Just the facts. What happened? What was said? Nothing more, nothing less. Can you do that? Yes, ma'am. Good, she stood. The medic should be here shortly. After that, you'll go home. Take a few days off. Talk to the counselor if you need to. We have resources available. She moved toward the door, then paused. James, what you did tonight, the way you handled that situation, it was remarkable. Not many people could have stayed that calm. Thank you. After she left, James sat alone in the quiet office. His hands had finally stopped shaking, but he knew he wouldn't sleep tonight. 3 days later, James sat in his small living room, watching his daughter color at the coffee table. Emma was working on another picture, this one showing a rainbow over a castle. She hummed while she drew, completely absorbed in her work. Sarah sat beside him on the couch, her hand resting on his knee. You sure you're okay? She asked for the 100th time. I'm sure, James said. And this time, he almost meant it. The news had broken the morning after the incident, but the story was carefully managed. Member of extended royal family briefly detained after disturbance at Windsor Castle. That was it. No guns, no hostage situation, no names mentioned, though anyone paying attention could figure out who it had been. James had given his statement. Just the facts, exactly as instructed. Then he had declined every interview request, every offer from tabloids promising enough money to buy a house. His commanding officer had called personally to commend his discretion and his bravery. There would be a commendation eventually. Maybe even a promotion. But that wasn't what James kept thinking about. He kept thinking about Tom's face when he had knelt on the wet stone. The way he had said he was tired of being this person. The absolute brokenness in his voice. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. James had learned to ignore those, but something made him answer this time. Corporal Hartley. A man's voice, quiet and tentative. Yes, this is Tom Parker Bowles. I hope it's okay that I called. They gave me your number. Said you might be willing to talk. James stood up, walking into the kitchen for privacy. Sarah watched him go, concern in her eyes. I'm here, James said. I wanted to apologize, Tom continued. Properly. Not through lawyers or statements. Person to person. What I did was unforgivable. I put your life at risk. I traumatized you. And I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. James leaned against the counter. He could hear the sincerity in Tom's voice. But also something else. Sobriety. Clarity. Tom sounded completely different than he had that night. Where are you now? James asked. Treatment facility, Switzerland. Very private, very expensive, very serious about getting me sorted out. I've been here since they brought me in that night. This is my first phone call they've allowed me to make. And you used it to call me? You saved my life, Tom said simply. Not by stopping me. By seeing me. By talking to me like I was a person, not a problem to be managed. I've had a lot of time to think these past few days. And I realized that moment in the rain when you said I could choose to be someone different. That was the first time in years anyone suggested I could change. James didn't know what to say to that. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Tom continued. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm getting help, real help. And whatever happens next, whatever consequences I face, I'm going to try to be better. Because you showed me that I could be. The gun, James said. Did you know it was fake? Tom was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I'm not sure. I bought it off someone at a pub 3 weeks ago. Didn't ask questions. That's how far gone I was. But I don't think I could have actually hurt you, James. Even in that state. I think some part of me knew. I'm glad no one was hurt, James said. And I'm glad you're getting help. Will you do something for me? Tom asked. Will you tell your superiors, or whoever asks, that I'm sorry? That I take full responsibility? I don't want my mother blamed for this. Or anyone else. This was my choice. My failure. My responsibility? I can do that, James agreed. Thank you. And James, thank you for giving me a second chance at life. I won't waste it. The call ended. James stood in his kitchen, phone still in his hand, processing what had just happened. Sarah appeared in the doorway. Who was that? Someone who needed to apologize, James said. She crossed the room and hugged him. You're a good man, James Hartley. I just did what anyone would do. No, she said firmly. Most people would have panicked. Most people would have made it worse. You saved a life that night. Maybe more than one, Emma called from the living room. Daddy, come see. I made you a medal. James smiled and went to see his daughter's creation. It was made of yellow construction paper and glitter, with a ribbon made of yarn. She had written Bravest Daddy in crayon letters. It's perfect, he said, letting her pin it to his shirt, and for the first time since that rainy night, James felt something like peace. 6 months passed. James returned to duty after his mandated leave. The story faded from the news cycle, replaced by new scandals, new dramas. Life at Windsor Castle continued as it always had, with the same rituals, the same protocols, same ancient rhythms. But James was different. He couldn't quite explain how, even to Sarah. He still stood at his post with the same discipline, the same unwavering focus. But now, when people walked past, he saw them differently. Not as potential threats or clearance levels, but as people carrying their own invisible weights. The Queen Consort passed him once, accompanied by her security detail. She slowed as she approached his position, met his eyes for just a moment, and nodded. Nothing more. Just a simple acknowledgement. But in that gesture, James understood gratitude. And perhaps forgiveness. For whatever role anyone thought he had played in her son's darkest moment. A letter arrived at James's home in late spring. Swiss postmark. Inside was a single page, handwritten. Dear James, it began. I've been sober for 6 months today. They tell me that's something to celebrate, though. I'm still taking it one day at a time. I'm writing to let you know that I'm being allowed to return to Britain soon. I wanted you to hear it from me first, in case that causes you any concern. I promise you I'm not the same person who held a gun to your head. Treatment has been brutal and beautiful and necessary. I've learned things about myself I never wanted to face, but I'm facing them now. I wanted to thank you again for seeing the person I could become, even when I couldn't see it myself. I don't expect we'll ever meet again under normal circumstances. But if we do, I hope you'll see that your faith in me wasn't misplaced. With deepest gratitude, Tom. James showed the letter to Sarah. She read it carefully, then folded it and handed it back. She asked, "That you'll see him again?" "No," James said, and he realized it was true. "I hope I do see him again. I hope he's doing well." Emma, now 5, and even more convinced that her father was a superhero, burst into the room wearing a cape made from a bedsheet. "Daddy, I need you to be the bad guy." James laughed and chased her around the living room, roaring dramatically while she squealed with delight. This, he thought, was what mattered. These moments. This family. This life he had nearly lost on a rainy November night. 2 months later, James stood at his post during a public event. Crowds lined the barriers, hoping for glimpses of the royal family. A convoy of vehicles pulled up. Doors opened. And there, stepping out with careful composure, was Tom Parker Bowles. He looked different, healthier. His eyes were clear. His movements were steady. He walked alongside his mother, who kept a protective hand near his elbow without actually touching him. The crowd murmured, some recognizing him, others simply curious. As Tom passed James's post, he paused. Just for a second, their eyes met. Tom nodded, a gesture so small that anyone else would have missed it. James, maintaining his rigid posture, didn't nod back. He couldn't. Protocol forbade it. But he did something he never did while on duty. Smiled. Just the smallest curve at the corner of his mouth, there and gone in an instant. Tom saw it. His own face softened with something like relief. Then he moved on, disappearing into the castle with his mother and the security detail. A tourist near the barrier called out to James, "Did you see that? Did you just smile? I thought you lot weren't supposed to do that." James returned to his perfect stillness, his expression once again blank and professional. The tourist took a photo and moved on, never knowing the story behind that brief moment of humanity. That evening, as James walked to his car after his shift, he found an envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. Inside was a card with a simple message, "Thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it." James tucked the card into his pocket and drove home through the twilight. Emma would be waiting for him, probably with another drawing, another story about her day. Sarah would have dinner ready and ask about his shift in that way she had. Reading everything he didn't say in the space between his words, he thought about how close he had come to losing all of this. How one moment, one decision, one squeeze of a trigger could have ended everything. But it hadn't. Because sometimes, even in our darkest moments, we meet someone who refuses to let us fall. James had been that person for Tom. And in some strange way, Tom had been that person for James too. Because that night in the rain had taught James something essential. That beneath all the uniforms and protocols, beneath all the titles and positions, everyone was just human. Just struggling. Just trying to find their way through the darkness. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is offer compassion instead of judgment. Understanding instead of condemnation. A second chance instead of a final verdict. James pulled into his driveway. Emma was already at the window, waving frantically. He waved back, his heart suddenly full of gratitude for this ordinary, extraordinary life. The rain had stopped. The storm had passed. And both men, in their own ways, had survived to see another day. That, James thought as he walked toward his front door, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.